Hello everyone, Tom Bellotti, most famous person you've never heard of. Welcome back to my blog. You know, doing time, incarceration is like Groundhog's Day. You know, the days, after a week, you get into a program and the days just, they blend into each other. Unless, something significant happens that kind of just burns in your memory. So, I want to share a couple of those things that happened during the time that I was there. One of the first things was a fight happened in the day room. It was over the television. A lot of the Latin people were watching soccer. A guy from Trinidad, and everyone from Trinidad, we all call him Trini. So Trini comes up and he changed the channel, and a fight ensued. Trini grabs a broom handle and he starts swinging it around and hitting everyone. There's another guy that just grabs it from him. The fight's broken up. That guy's moved. The house is on lockdown, of course, because the fight broke down in it. But the next day, that guy was stabbed and killed over retaliation from changing the channel. Yeah. Another time is when I was sitting there, I'm talking to Buddha, and he whipped out these 3 big knives, showed them to me. And I was like, well, how in the world can you get a knife like that in here? He's like, well, we pay the guards. And we, if there's someone that wants to put in work and become a crown member of the Kings, we make them hide these knives. And now, this isn't a small knife. This is something like this. A big steak knife. It was 3 of them, just like this. This being the largest of the 3, the other 2 being a little bit smaller. None of them having the wooden handle on them, just the bare metal. Now, you go through at least a minimum of 5 different metal detectors, and you can't. If you set off in any one of them, you're stripped down. They search you for everything. They just make sure that you go through that metal detector without setting it off, and they're all highly sensitive. So there's no way in the world that you can get something like this through there. So I ask him, I'm like, how do you get something like this in there? He goes, well, we pay the guards. We'll give them like $3,000. They'll bring in a knife, and then we'll have someone that's putting in work, and they'll hide it. And now this house gets shaken down and searched once, twice, more every week. So the police or the COs, they know where these things are hidden, but they intentionally don't find them. Because finding a knife like this, one, will let the higher ups know that there's no way an inmate is bringing this in. This is getting brought in by the correction officers. And if the correction officers are bringing in this, we've got to start searching them more when they're coming in to work. And that would, put a big dam in a lot of revenue that a lot of the COs make. Now, not all of them are bringing in knives or contraband. You can't just put a blanket statement against every CO. But, all it takes is a couple of them to, the old saying, it only takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch. Some jobs, everyone just has to be good at and on their point and honest. But when you're dealing with people, that's just impossible. It's an impossible equation to ever, complete when you're dealing with people. So they don't find these knives intentionally because it would blow up the spot for everyone else that doesn't necessarily bring in knives, but they bring in tobacco or marijuana. Sell it to the, it's a big hustle. And then, a CO can make a lot of extra money by bringing in contraband for the inmates. Another thing. Let me think. It's kind of hard to top those. Those are pretty good ones. I'll talk about one of my personal experiences that happened to me. I was a SPA. That basically means suicide watch. And I worked the box. The box is basically where everyone goes for solitary confinement. It'll be a wing with all these individual cells, and none of them get let out. They're in there 23 hours a day, if not 24 hours a day, because a lot of them don't get let out for their exercise or for a shower. Your meal is brought to you and everything is right there in that cell. So a lot of people don't like to work the box, even though that's the highest paying job that you can get as an SPA, and that's an easy to get job in the jail. They don't like working the box because you get sprayed working there. Now, if you don't know what that means, it's the inmates that are in the box will take their tubes of toothpaste and fill them up with piss and shit. Don't ask me how they get it in there, but it happens. And they put it underneath the door where they have that space, and when you go walking by, they'll stomp on it and you'll get sprayed with piss and shit. Now, most everyone I know that's worked the box has always had that story of being sprayed. I, fortunately, have never been sprayed. And it was, for the most part, I just sit in the day room, read my book, and the only time I'd be interacting with them is when I was, just feeding them. I put together their meals and just fed them individually in their cells, and that was it. Well, one day, I get escorted from 6 Upper, where I'm staying at, to the box, and it's, all the way on the other side of the wing. And when I'm being transported from one spot to another when I'm working, I got to be escorted. And so I'm escorted by a CO, and he brings me to a spot where, it's normally where we are, in the little day room to the side of where, all of the cells are at. But there's already another SBA guy in there. I don't know what's going on. He's just in there reading a book. I sit down at the table, start reading my book. No big deal. We're in there for a little bit, and that guard that brought me there is no longer there. There's just another guard on duty. And I see this, this big guy in there. He looks like Luther Vandross. He's plain clothes. He looks like a DOC, but he turns out to be the warden of the jail. And he yells at the guard, and he goes, "Why the fuck are there 2 SBA guys in there?" Because, normally it's one on each side. And I guess because the 2 of us are there, the other side isn't being a person on duty. And it's protocol that there has to be an SPA person there, a suicide watch. So, the guard is not the guy that, brought us there. So he just shrugs his shoulders with the body language. He doesn't say anything verbally. And, Luther Vandross, the warden, looks at me and says, "You, get the fuck up and go to the other side." I'm reading a book, and I'm just a couple of lines away from the end of the chapter. And I'm like, okay, let me just finish these lines right here, and I'll get right up for that. And that's what I meant, word for word. I didn't mean any animosity or anything like that. But he starts flipping out. He goes, "Oh, get him up, strip search him. I want him written up on a ticket," and all that. So I'm like, what the hell is going on with this? So, the officer tells me to get up. I go to the side where they get strip searched before they go into the shower. And I'm over there taking off my clothes. And you got Luther Vandross over here yelling at me, saying I'm going to be in the box next and he's going to be put up on more charges. I looked at him. I said, not a damn thing's going to happen to me. I was only doing what I was told to do. And he kept saying, "Oh, you're going to be honest." I looked at him. I said, "You seem pretty sure of yourself." And now this officer is telling me, "Hey, why don't you calm down? This guy's my boss. Stop." And I looked at him like, "Dude, you didn't help me out. You didn't tell me to put my head down and put the book away or anything. That's your boss. This guy's a jerk off. You didn't look out for me. Why am I going to look out for you?" I said, "Fuck you and fuck you too." Said, "Not a damn thing's going to happen to me." And at the whole time I'm looking at him like, "Hey, you seem pretty sure of yourself." I'm just mouthing off to this guy as much as I possibly can. And, finally, strip search is over. I put my clothes back on, and now this officer's got to escort me back to my house. Luther Vandross, the warden, tells him that to write me up on a ticket. Now, if I'm charged or not, there's a little bit of a mock trial for it, but I'm charged $25 out of my commissary, the money that I have in there. It's a given. You don't get that back. And I'm barely making any cash. I'm only making $8 a day by working at SBA, and that's getting paid twice as much as you would any freaking place else. Yeah, in jail, mind you. I make freaking $80-something an hour at the time as a union member. And now here I am, fucking working $8 a day in Rikers Island at a place I'm falsely incarcerated. So I'm walking back, and this guy is about to write me a ticket. So I let him know, I'm like, "Hey, I'm in here on trumped up charges, and I'll be out these cases are gonna, this case and these charges are gonna be dismissed. And if you write that ticket, I'm gonna have your full name right there for me on my paperwork. I'll just take you to court when I get out of here and sue you for emotional distress. You know, I didn't do anything wrong. I was only sitting where I was escorted to be brought, and all of a sudden this stuff happens to me. And then you're gonna write me up on a ticket for it and charge and take $25 out of my commissary when I barely have anything in there. I wouldn't be able to get anything. So any court will say that is emotional distress, especially after they find out all the charges were dismissed and everything. And that's when I would bring this to court. This is what I'm telling them as we're walking down the hall. So I was like, yeah, go ahead, file it. And it only cost me $45 to bring you to court. You guys show up anyway. You're gonna miss days of work coming to court, and if you don't show up, I win automatically. No sweat off my back. No, I really didn't plan on following through with, bringing this guy to court over something so petty, but it sounded good. And what else do I have to lose, but by bluffing him? And it worked. He didn't write me up, but Luther Vandross was out for blood. He found out that I didn't get the summons, and, he went and talked to the captain who's in charge of all of the SBAs throughout the whole jail, not just people in the box. And he asked her, I want the name of that white boy with the bald head that works the box. So she asked, do you have his name? He responded, no. She goes, well, if you don't have his name, I can't write him a ticket. And I found out that story when she told me that directly herself. And then after that, she had a big smile on her face too. And then she told me, she's like, Bilotti, you're the only white guy that works the box. As soon as he told me, your description, I knew exactly who it was, but she didn't tell him. But I guess this guy was a jerk off and no one liked him. And they actually enjoyed the fact that I basically told him to go fuck himself. And they all, basically let me get away with it and applauded me at the same time. Not necessarily to my face, but it was implied. And, for about 2 weeks, they said, also, she kept me from going to the box. And she was stationing me in other places because Luther Vandross was looking for me to find me. So she actually shielded me from being found by this guy. And for 2 weeks, everyone was talking about it, but also at the same time, no one was allowed to have their books, it caused a whole stink. But when I came back to work and everything, and I'm just still doing my routine, I'm reading books, and everyone was like, well, if Tom can read his book, then I'm reading my book too. So everyone just started reading again. And that's how you weaponize white privilege and kind of help everyone else out by, if Tom's doing it, I'm doing it, and no one questioned it. And the only reason why they weren't allowed to do it in the first place was because what happened with me, So, yeah. I remember when one of the first times they're escorting me back to the box, and one of the guards came up to me. He mentioned all that situation with his boss, and he looked at me. He goes, "Tom, he said, you're crazy like Jeffrey Dahmer." And, he had a big smile on his face. He meant it as a compliment, but being compared to Jeffrey Dahmer when you're in a freaking jail around a bunch of murderers isn't necessarily the best comparison. What other stories are there? Because I want to knock all these little fun stories out and then start talking about some more serious stuff after this. So I'm going out of my timing here and just crunching in the interesting things that happened to me within that 5 months I was there. Here's one. There was a, I don't know if you call it a transvestite, but she actually had a sex change, and they had her, and she was, if you didn't know it, you'd end up getting caught playing the crying game. She was very good looking, and the first time I noticed her was she stood out like a sore thumb in the lunchroom, and I'm walking with Buddha. And Buddha told me, he's like, "Hey Tom, when someone like that comes to prison, you got people like, yo, I got dibs on that. They'll treat her like she's a piece of property. People will get stabbed and killed over trying to, make something like that their girlfriend or their wife in prison." And I was like, well, it's just crazy. But mind you, this is only county jail, so none of that stuff is happening. And she pops out a couple times. She's in a different house, and they keep moving from house to house. And this is before I'm sleeping next to Buddha, and I'm sleeping in the center aisle, and there's an empty bunk next to me, and then she's sleeping right there next to me in that bunk. And it's just during the day, not at the law library, and she's sitting there like laying there right next to me. So I inquired about what Buddha told me. I said, I asked her, "Have you ever been to prison?" I also asked her if she had all of her parts, and she told me no, she had an operation. And so I thought it was kind of crazy that she's in here with all of us, everyone with their parts. She's like, yeah, this has happened to me several times, and I've had successful lawsuits with them. She mentioned this Captain Thomas that is always, infatuated with her and follows her around like crazy, always asking crazy questions about her, very uncomfortable. And, for a person that's the captain, person of authority over there with the CEOs, sexually harassing her, or him, but she made the choice to be her. And she's in there with all of us. I thought it was kind of crazy. And then I asked about that, if she ever been to prison, and if what Buddha was telling me was true. She's like, yeah. She's like, that kind of stuff will happen, and that's why it's crazy when they put people like in what her situation was in those type of places. And again, she said she's had several lawsuits and won, but they still continue that cycle of putting him in those places. So she wasn't there long, only like for a night, and then they moved her to a different house. And now when she's not there, all the guys in the house are making fun of me for talking to her. So I looked at all the guys. I'm like, hey man, I'm the only one that had the balls to talk to her. Where you guys were all afraid that if you spoke to her, you'd want to sleep with her. So I guess I'm the most manly guy here. And then everyone just should have shut up. I put them in their place. and when it comes to that, I was right. I know my sexuality. I know what team I play for, where I go to bat, and what I swing at. And I was just asking questions. I thought it was crazy what Buddha told me, and this was my opportunity to find out from the horse's mouth. I study social anthropology. I've had for years with people, but this is my first time, having this experience with people with that whole prison mentality, and it is totally different. That because there is an institutionalization mindset that lifetimers have, and there is a behavior that corresponds with that is different from the rest of us that live in the free world. Let me just see if there's anything else I can add in there. It's for the most part, again, every day they just blend into each other. The only time you really know what day it is because of what they're serving at chow. And if you want to eat it that day, or if you can just make yourself a cup of ramen noodles and not eat the chow that day. They might be serving the donkey dicks, which are basically two faux meat sausages in puke that are just unedible. When you go to throw your food away, it's just everyone throws them away. A very, very low percentage of the inmates will actually eat this meal. It all just gets thrown away, and it's such a waste. You think that the people that run the jail would stop serving this because they know it's a great waste, but they probably get it for a great price. There's a kickback from the people that they're buying it from, and who cares? It's inmates, it's on the taxpayer's dollar, and we're all buttering our pockets from it. So who cares? Feed them chicken that day. Everybody likes the chicken and rice. Yeah. Okay. There's another thing that because of my not having a Muslim ID, which was, kind of like a blue, and mine being an orange because it said none. They don't recognize being Buddhist. And I'm, still eating my halal meals every day, but every now and then there wasn't someone who's down with the program, and I've got to go through this whole speech with them. And I always got my way. But, that happening so much, the powers that be said, this guy's got to speak to the imam and get a Muslim ID now, because we've got to stop going through this. But the imam was, he was sick for a little while, and he wasn't in. So when he finally starts coming back in, I'm going and I'm meeting with the imam. And, I guess it's kind of tricky for them to, just switch over someone's ID that has none to a Muslim. For whatever reason there, that I'm getting a lot of questions and stuff like that. And I let the guy know, I'm like, I'm Middle Eastern. I ask him, do you know what it means when there's a person in Iran that wears the black turban? He says, no. I said, that means that they have a direct descent from Muhammad himself. And there are members of my family that wear that black turban. And now here you are asking me to validify my connection to the Muslim religion. And, so finally he asked me, he goes, why did you not, say it before? Well, one, I am genuinely a Buddhist, but I can't just say that to them. I've got to, try to help the guards out again and try to get this Muslim ID so they're not having problems with me all the time. And I told them the first thing that comes to memory is basically, the things that I've dealt with when living in Florida in the past, when people would find out that I was Middle Eastern, is racism. I said I didn't say it because of racism, and it was just something that has always used to trigger just not, stating because of the things I've dealt with in the past. Now, mind you, I'm in a room with three black people, and the one thing that hits home is like, yeah, okay, I can understand that. And then there was no more argument. They were like, okay, I'll give you the Muslim ID, and it was the truth, and they knew it. When I come back, then next time I'm gonna be giving a lot of tips on the things that I learned and ways to work around the judicial system. And the truth is, you should really be prepared for the next episode, because I'm going to be telling you things that you really need to be writing down. And even if you're not going through them, you may know someone who's going through it at the time. We've all dealt with a cage bird, and if you're dealing with one that is still fighting a case, please, the next one I'm going to be talking about, it needs to be, it needs to go viral. All this other stuff is just some crazy little stories that people might find interesting. But the next stuff I have to say is real information. And I hope everyone tunes in for it. Peace.